getting an echo. This is not, hope this works all right. Can you hear us, Dee?
I can hear you. If it needs to be, maybe call me back on a landline.
Would that be better for you if you're on a cell phone?
I'm fine. It all depends on how it is at your end.
Well, I think that if I hold this appropriately back from the microphone, it won't be too loud. As members of the audience, is this okay? You can hear her and us? Okay, well, let's continue this way and see how it works. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Environment Committee meeting, the City of Rehoboth, and it's Thursday, January 23rd, 11 in the morning, or 11:05 in the morning. First order of business is to call the roll. We have 6 members available, which is a quorum of our 10. I was expecting a few others. Steuart Martens said that he would not be available. His mother is ill and he has to go take care of her. Blessings to her. Anybody else? Sammy Cunningham promised that he would be here today. I hope that he does still make it. I spoke to him in person just last night to see if he can show up. This would be his 3rd missed meeting, however. Let's see, we should do the roll call. Kevin, you want to start off? Kevin Carr, you're here.
Nettie Green.
Nettie.
Mary Peck.
Catherine Bergwin.
Catherine Bergwin.
Janet Taylor Smith.
Janet Taylor Smith and Charles Garlow here. So we have 6 people present. Minutes of the meeting was held on January the 3rd. Catherine Bergwin, our wonderful secretary, has been doing an able job of taking care of our minutes for us. Thank you so much.
I'll take a raise, thank you.
And those minutes were circulated to others, as I recall. Anybody have a motion to accept the minutes as recorded?
Also move.
Thank you. A second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The minutes have been approved. Correspondence on our agenda. The printed agenda here doesn't have, I think, all of the correspondence that may have been received, but I'm sorry, here's this other agenda over here, the more recent one, in case you haven't seen this one. It's got the correspondence on it. I'm sorry, the agenda that was outside the room had an abbreviated agenda, if anybody wants to take, yes, exactly. This has several pieces of correspondence on it. Briefly summarizing, from Sally Foreman of SOLA 3, that's the Save Our Lakes Alliance, had some goals for plastic ordinance, which she shared with us, and Joan Flaherty had some interesting information she shared about what other people are doing with single-use plastic products generally, citing that China and Pakistan and countries all around the world are engaged in reducing pollution this way, as well as 32 communities in Massachusetts and a whole slew of beach towns in New Jersey. So we are not alone, if you will, in considering making some recommendations on the issues of single-use plastics and their impact on the environment. Are there any questions about the correspondence? Is there any other correspondence which anybody may have received and didn't let us know about?
We had the one from Heather.
Heather Metz.
Yeah.
Heather Metz is...
All the correspondence has been included. It was just not, because of the lateness of receiving it, it was just not embedded into the agenda at the time, but all the correspondence is in the packet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ann. Let me thank Ann publicly for the excellent work she does putting up with us as we get started in forming our committee and learning all the rules of the road. She's been a great help, and I appreciate her receiving things from us even at the last minute. So that's, Heather Metz said she would not be able to attend today, and as a result, she was the one who was going to speak about 5G. So if there's no objection, we'll not have any discussion about 5G today. I'm sorry if there are people who attended here just to hear the 5G discussion. Nobody is saying that they were here for that, so we haven't disappointed anybody, but we'll hear from Heather at our February meeting on 5G, so we'll skip that agenda item.
And actually what her email is about her investigation on pesticides. So just kind of what she's thinking and what she would propose and blah, blah, blah.
Heather has 2 very interesting areas of inquiry, both pesticides, Roundup sorts of topics, and the 5G separate topics, but we'll be glad to hear from her next time when she is here. Any other correspondence that we think of? Okay, old business. Let me start off by saying, in the interest of a full disclosure, that I have met with our city's attorney, Glenn Mandelis, who is here today with us to discuss full compliance with FOIA and the open meetings laws, so that when we meet with any of the folks like the SOLA 3 folks who have, and Commissioner Gay invited us to attend a coffee with them. We had less than a number of people there forming a quorum, so I don't find any, and our attorney does not find any problems with such things. However, it is a tricky area of the law, and Mr. Mandelis will be here in February 7th, we hope, to give further details on this topic and answer your questions. So that is as to things that have happened in the past, old business, if you will. I have, what else on the issue of out of this normal meetings hours we should discuss? I think we're okay there. Under old business, there's a listing of a report which Steuart, Martens, and I attended the full commissioners workshop, and I provided a summary of some of the activities that we are interested in investigating, one of which, of course, is single-use plastics, but there are other topics as well, like climate change and pesticide use and 5G and all sorts of other topics, which we discussed with the commissioners. I think they favorably received an update. We didn't have a lot to report because we've only met twice at that point, the December and January meetings, but we hope to put together some cogent, rational, supportive, helpful proposals here shortly. So that was the report on old business. Was there any other old business which we should discuss? Okay, let's move on to the new business. Today, under new business, we're going to talk first about plastic single-use products, and I'm pleased to say that we have on the phone, hopefully you're still with us, Dee?
Still here.
Oh, good. We haven't lost you yet. Dee Durham is a Newcastle County Commissioner all the way up in the Wilmington area, and also president of the Plastics Free Delaware nonprofit organization, which has been lobbying for some time for improvements in our environment. An all-around nice person. She's come here to Rehoboth Beach before to speak to the Green Drinks organization, part of which I am an organizer for, about the same topic, and she expressed an interest in helping us in any way she can to come up with good proposals on this topic. Let me say this, that anything else I should say about you, Dee, by way of praiseworthy and noteworthy comments in your history? Nothing.
Everything else is bad news.
Everything else is bad news. You're I'm not the only funny one around here. That's good. Well, Dee, I have asked you via email when I invited you several different questions, but I can imagine the members of our committee here, the Environment Committee, have other questions for you as well. And I guess the first question I have had was whether or not the plastic bag ban law, which was passed by the state legislature as House Bill 130, does or does not impact upon our ability, or the city of Rehoboth's ability, to pass any ordinance regarding plastic bags, because there is some confounding language. As I said, met this morning with our city attorney, Glenn Mandelis, who reviewed with me some of the language of the statute, which might seem to make it more difficult for us. And Glenn said that he was going to be checking with other parties, perhaps some of the attorneys for the state, to see what their interpretation of the laws is, to see if there's any prohibition. But I know, Dee, that you were part of the effort to put this law into effect, to get it passed through the state legislature, and you know some of the inside story on which provisions were struck out, which might help to indicate the intent of the legislature. So I thought I would first ask you if you could give us your opinion on that topic. I know you're not a lawyer, but that's all right. You can give us your understanding.
Right. Sure. Thank you, Charlie. So, yes, I'm not a lawyer, but I did happen to talk to Adam Schlachter yesterday, who's the DNREC manager of the department that oversees such things. He's not the DNREC attorney either, but we had been emailing about this topic, and then I saw him yesterday at a meeting, and we chatted about it, and he agrees that the amendment that was put on House Bill 130 dealing with local governments and the size 50,000 population does not, I mean, if you read it in plain English, it does not say anything about limiting smaller local governments of cities with populations less than 50,000. So just the plain English does not say anything about that. And then secondly, the intent behind that amendment had absolutely nothing to do with trying to do that. It had more to do with DNREC trying to differentiate the fact that DNREC's concern was that if local governments did indeed go ahead and pass laws on their own, that DNREC would be responsible for laws that were different than the state law. So DNREC is responsible for over the enforcement of the law as written, the state law regarding plastic bags. But their concern was if Wilmington or any other local government, I guess in this case, Wilmington, passed a law, with other parameters, that they would be responsible for enforcement. And so that's what they were trying to get at. Unfortunately, I wasn't in town the day that all happened, or I would have pointed out to them that the language actually doesn't achieve what they wanted it to achieve. But if Adam and I agreed to continue the conversation if need be, and if need be, we will go back to the legislators. In fact, I already have a call in to Gerald Brady to tell him we might need some clarifying language. But everyone that I've talked to in DNREC and in the legislature does not believe it says anything about restricting local governments. And in fact, the HB 130 does open up the door for local governments to do fee-based laws, which had been restricted before. So the intent behind the bill was certainly not to increase restrictions.
Okay, let me just summarize for those who are here looking at this for the first time, in the audience or anywhere out there. The language that's concerning, at least to me, was any municipality with a population in excess of 50,000, which would probably be Wilmington, Delaware, may enact a law requiring stores in excess of 500 square feet to comply with the plastic bag ban law. That implied or suggested to me that if you are not in excess, if you're smaller, then you may not enact a law. But it doesn't really say that. It doesn't say you may not enact a law. And apparently to what you're telling us, Dee, is that those who may have been intending that it had different intentions, so we're not trying to restrict smaller cities like ours from taking action in this area. It would certainly be, in my opinion, I'm a lawyer, guilty as charged. I'll throw myself on the mercy of the court. That the whereases that lead into the passage of this law, whereas we want to reduce pollution, and with it's terrible and all the thousands of bags that are thrown out there, all those in the whereas clauses, certainly indicates that the legislature intended to reduce plastic bag pollution. So if you were to interpret this in keeping with the intention of the legislature and all those whereas clauses, you would think that that would allow our city to pass some efforts to reduce plastic bag pollution, whether it's a ban or a fee or something or other else. Any other thoughts on that from the committee or questions for Dee on just the plastic ban bill? Lisa?
Hi, Dee.
This is Lisa Schlachter from our commission.
The commissioner's also a member of the committee here. My question is, can you explain the you mentioned the fee-based components? Can you talk us through that?
Sure. Yep. So a lot of countries, counties, municipalities, states, big cities all around the world there's sort of, when you're trying to reduce plastic bag pollution, there's sort of two ways to go. One is just an outright ban, and there are variations on that theme in terms of, like, for instance, our state law only does it for certain large stores, so you can kind of limit, how far it goes. Another thing the state law does is it only restricts the distribution of such bags below a certain thickness. So anything over 2.25 mils will be after next year allowable. So that type of thing these laws include. So the other way to go about it, which basically accomplishes the same thing as a ban, is to put a mandatory fee on the bags. Like if you go to Washington, D.C., I think they are still charging a 5-cent fee. So what it does is it externalizes the cost of the bag, at least symbolically. It's not an exact one-for-one, like, cost, because actually costs of bag pollution are probably a lot more than that. But it just by putting a mandatory fee on plastic bags, it makes the shopper think twice. And basically, like when Washington, D.C. instituted their fee, bag usage dropped by like 60% overnight. And so, and if you increase the fee a little bit more, it drops it even more. And so, same thing is done in the UK. They have fee-based laws, or at least they did. I think some of them are switching over to bans, but fee-based laws were a way. Some states have preempted bans, so fees were another way to basically achieve the same thing. And then some places use those fees, like Washington, D.C. uses the fee specifically for the Anacostia River cleanup work that, needs to be done as well, so it goes to a relevant cause. We tried to get a fee-based bill in Delaware because we started working on this 10 years ago, and at the time, fee-based bills were actually probably more prevalent. And so that's how we started out working on legislation as a fee-based bill, but there was no appetite in the legislature. At least certain leaders in the legislature didn't want to take that approach because it can be perceived as a tax, even though it's not really a tax because the consumer has a choice. So that's why we eventually got House Bill 130, which was a ban-based bill. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Does anything in the state legislation preclude a municipality? And again, please don't quote me as saying I totally support a fee base. I don't know what I support. I'm just asking questions. Does anything in the current legislation preclude a municipality from pursuing a fee-based model?
Well, it did. The 2009 law, when the 2009 law was enacted, that was the law that required large retailers to have recycle bins.
Right.
And that was kind of the first step in this direction. And so that law, the retailers got a clause in there that precluded local governments from doing fee-based laws on bags. So we worked hard to try to get that clause removed, and indeed in HB 130 last year, we did get that clause struck out. So
let me reiterate, I think that you're right on that, Dee. I'm looking at paragraph G, and then under that 1B, there was a B, which said you are prohibited from imposing a plastic bag carry-out bag fee, and that was struck out. So that's striking language from the old statute.
So there's nothing, D, now that would preclude a municipality from pursuing fee-based?
Correct. So you could do either, whichever one you prefer.
Oh, great. That's really a good clarification. I was a little confused about it being struck or anything else. But I would ask our attorney, City Attorney Glenn Mendelis is here to participate and guide us as well as we think about this. But Glenn, is that considered like a new tax that the city would need state just off, I know you may have to research it, but I'm wondering if we did go with a fee-based, if we decide to even pursue this, but if we did go with a fee-based, would that be something that would require state approval as a new tax?
There is a state statute that does prohibit municipalities from imposing any new taxes that aren't authorized under the charter. So this is something I'd have to look a bit at. I feel as though it's probably not, since there's a state authorization for this sort of activity it seems to be a state authorization within the act itself. We have to answer this question first about whether municipalities can do it or not. I think answer to that question is that municipalities can do it, then probably the state authorization that's within the act already is enough, and it wouldn't need to be a separate charter amendment, but something I'd have to look at a
Something
little
you have
closer.
to look at.
to
Yeah, I
your
just
question.
was curious what your initial thoughts were.
Yeah.
Okay, and have other municipalities already gone down the path of implementing their own approach to, to banning or putting a fee on?
Here in Delaware?
Here in Delaware, that you know of, Dee?
Right now, there are none that have actually made it happen, but there are a few that are sort of in the same stage you are. We've been working with Wilmington and Newark. They're probably the three of you are probably about the farthest along in considering this. But if you look at New Jersey and Massachusetts and other places, Maryland even, local governments, like many local governments in those states have taken action and passed laws. So I don't really understand why Delaware's local government community has been slower than, like, for instance, in New Jersey, but it is what it is, and we're trying to change that.
Well, Dee, perhaps we'll be able to be a leader in this category and show that
I'm
Rehoboth
hoping-
Beach is
I'm
number
hoping
one.
Rehoboth will be.
And Dee, just again, everybody else may know this because you're way more detailed, I'm just kind of are involved, engaged on this, but so far. But what would be the benefit of a municipality doing it, given the Delaware the statewide legislation?
Well, because as I maybe kind of alluded to earlier, the state law only captures the largest retailers of 7,000 square feet or more, or those that have 3 or more locations of 3,000 square feet or more. So those would be like Wawa's or the large drugstore chains.
Royal
would be
Farms.
captured under that. So that's probably the main thing, is that the state law honestly doesn't go far enough, but it's what we could get done at the time, and we certainly hope to come back in a few years and broaden the state language, and that's exactly what happened in California. People out there were frustrated that the state wasn't taking action, so they had like over 100 local governments take action and pass laws. So they had 100 or more different laws all across the state until it finally got to the point where the retailers were like, mea culpa, we would rather have a state law with a level playing field than to have all these different local governments with different laws and different compliances. But so it's sort of, the state pushes, local governments push, the state pushes, where hopefully eventually we'll all get to the point where these bags just, will be very minimally used. But the point is that the local governments can move more quickly and can do more than what the state law does.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Here in Rehoboth Beach, I think the only retail establishment that would be subject to the state law, HB 130, would be the Royal Farms out at the traffic circle, because they have several stores around the state that qualify under that.
And apparently there is some discussion about Wawa's and Royal Farms. My understanding, because the law HB 130 doesn't cover restaurants, it only covers quote unquote retailers. So my understanding is that Wawa, and this is a rumor maybe, but Wawa says that the new law doesn't apply to them because they are a restaurant. And my understanding is that's only true if they have seating. So, like for your Royal Farms, I don't know if they have seating or not, and I don't know if. So that, again, let's assume that's true, that Wawa and Royal Farms might not fall under HB 130. That's another thing we need to come back statewide in a few years and try to tighten up. But again, so the law doesn't go into effect till next January, and then I'm sure we won't be able to pass any new regs to tighten things up at the state level for probably at least another 2 years, if not more, until we see how that's going. The legislators aren't going to do anything more until they give that law a chance to work.
They may just try to put a picnic table out over by the garbage cans and call that a restaurant. I would hope that that would not be the case, because lots of places sell food. I mean,
Yeah.
browse about books, you can get a chocolate bar there. Does that
Well,
make that a restaurant?
The supermarkets sell food. The supermarkets have tables sometimes.
No,
It
that's
probably
true.
depends on what their business license is too, like what category they have it under.
Yeah, Dee, this is Mary Peck. This is a question I wanted to ask you. I know restaurant is not defined in the statute, and I believe Wawa is not a restaurant, and I just wondered, and I've heard that they are pushing for that. They are a restaurant, and I just wondered if you had heard, first of all, through your DNREC contacts, what their position is going to be, and whether the state will enforce or attempt to enforce against the Wawas and Royal Farms.
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't actually asked DNREC that question, but I am meeting with the Food Industry Council President or Executive Director Julie Miro-Wenger next week, and I will ask her what their position is and see if we can make some headway there. But yeah, I can reach out to Adam and ask him too. Otherwise, I think like worst case scenario, we're just going to have to live with the fact that Wawa and Royal Farms aren't included, and we'll just have to capture, at a state level, have to capture them later. But if local governments take action, again, you can fill those gaps where the state law is, has created loopholes, I guess.
We would be a small patch on a large hole, but we'll do what we can. I hear Nettie.
I'm Nettie Green, and I had a question, Dee, about the enforcement of state law, or if we had a local law, who would enforce this? DNREC, or who enforces these laws?
Well, you guys might know more about this than I do, but I would assume that if you pass your own law, you would be responsible for enforcement. At least I guess as far as it goes beyond the state law. But I'm not an attorney or in the enforcement business, but I would say that our position has always sort of been we aren't even advocating for to be aware of enforcement, because we think that the public will enforce the law, and public pressure and public education is what's going to make the difference. And we honestly aren't looking for anyone to get fined or any stores to get penalized or whatever. I don't think that's, no one's going to be reporting stores to get them fined. So I don't think that's really, I don't know. To me, it's not a big question, because I just don't think that's going to be a big component of what actually happens in the real world. And, so I don't know. That's just my take on things.
Okay, just another question about that. I agree with you with local businesses. I would think local businesses would respond very well. I wonder about large corporations such as Royal Farms and Wawa and Starbucks.
The thing there is that they, for instance, I mentioned I'm meeting with Julie next week, and we've developed, over 10 years I've been working on this, Julie and I have developed a great relationship, and we communicate with each other and discuss any concerns, and if I have a question, I'll bring it to her. And for instance, my local CVS didn't have a recycle bin for a while. When I noticed it, I went to Julie and said, hey, that my CVS doesn't have a recycle bin as required by law. And she connected me with their corporate office, and I sent them the law, and they were thankful. They were grateful, because they said it's impossible for them to keep up with, 50 different state laws and who knows how many local laws. And the next time I went in, they had a bin. So, I think that sort of thing is what is the way we anticipate trying to raise awareness and bring about responsiveness to the law. And the Food Industry Council, which Julie heads, has been very responsive, and Julie is very much on top of the law, and they discuss it at all their meetings, and all her members are very much on top of the law. So I don't think the large corporations are really the problem. Now there may be some that aren't clients of hers, that maybe aren't in that communication loop, but I don't think that. I think with a little bit of public pressure, that's where we'll bring about the change.
May I
And sometimes
recommend?
it's just a matter of raising awareness to the right person, as I said with CVS.
May I recommend that we all swing by the CVS here locally and see if they've got a plastic bag recycling bin?
They do.
Right.
Nettie, you had a further question?
One further point that really hit me about what you said is that if we picked a fee-based thing on bags, that this is a choice, not a tax. I think that's a very important distinction to make to the state and the locality, that this is a choice, it's not a tax. And with those monies, what small monies would be gained, could be used for environmental causes. And so I think that's a very important point to make to the public and other people. It's not a tax, it's a
Hi,
choice.
Dee, this is Janet Taylor-Smith. I think that's excellent. That's a big distinction right there, is people do have a choice. They don't have to get plastic bags. They can carry reusable bags, like most of us here do. So yeah, it's not I don't consider it a tax either. I think it's a choice. Absolutely, and it deters people, and you said it's quite effective to do so.
So it's a fee, it's not a tax,
Right,
but
no.
that's where Glenn has to help you figure
Right.
that out, I
Sure.
guess.
We understand.
If you want to go in that direction.
Yeah, sounds
Just-
very
just a
promising.
quick- Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
That's okay, I'm done.
I just wanted to follow up too, Dee. One thing you didn't mention, there's probably a good reason for that. It seems like there's three models actually you could consider: the fee, the ban, and an incentive-based model. Is that something that was considered, or do you see that wrapped into one of the other two options? I've actually seen that be successful. I think particularly.
You mean like where the stores give back 5 cents for using a reusable bag, or
What sort of
bringing your
incentive?
own?
Where, for example, maybe the city code says, if you don't use plastic bags, we'll give you, totally making this up, 10% discount on your business license, or something along those lines, versus, a penalty if you don't comply through enforcement, or an extra fee to your customers.
Haven't heard of that.
I honestly have never heard of any laws used in that way. I do know a lot of the grocery stores used to give 5 cents if you brought a reusable bag, but up here they all stopped doing it because, frankly, I think it got to the point where it was costing them too much money. I know Julie told me that one year, and this goes back probably 9 or 10 years. Well, they haven't been doing it in a long time. So, but anyway, back then, before a lot of awareness was raised on this issue, when they were all giving 5 cents, it cost the ShopRite one year $50,000. Not like that's across all their stores in Delaware, not just one store, but that's a huge hunk of cash in 5-cent rebates. So I think personally that's why they all stopped doing it. But I'm just guessing. So again, to answer your question, I guess I have never seen that sort of thing put into a law. I suppose you could consider it, but in a way, it's the same thing as a fee. It's just kind of the reverse. I don't.
Doesn't give us.
I guess you could consider it. I just don't know of any examples out there along those lines.
Well, we might very well have that as one of the options that we present to our commissioners. Thank you, Lisa.
That's exactly where I was going, so good. And maybe one
We
that says that's.
could
the
Google it
stupidest
up and
idea
see if we
ever.
could find any. I just don't know of any.
Well, if you find anything, Dee, and you want to send that to me, we're in communication electronically, and I'll make sure we enter that as correspondence received by our committee so that everybody will be able to look at what you send me. Any other thoughts on
Okay.
plastic bags and or fees or bans or incentives? I will say that every time I go to the Royal Farm, person in front of me ask for a cigarette pack or something small like that, goes right into a plastic bag. The person pulls out his pack of cigarettes, and then there goes the plastic bag out into wherever, either the waste stream or the environment, which I find is a habit that Royal Farms has. They don't even ask, would you like a plastic bag or not? It's akin to the way when I go to a restaurant, if I'm not careful and say, no straw please in my water, sure enough, the water's gonna show up with a straw in it, and I go, oh, dang, I didn't talk fast enough. But the old idea of having a straw or plastic bag or a whatever by request only is perhaps another option we might want to consider.
I have a question.
Catherine Burgwin.
Hi, Dee, and actually this question is for Lisa, and this is Catherine Burgwin speaking. That incentive model, do you know, that was something that I thought as a whole committee might be an idea that we think about on a lot of issues. And I wondered, did you ask that specifically because you knew of some place that was doing that?
No, I just recall, and again, I wasn't necessarily on the policy side of EPA, but I know that a lot of things we tried to do incentive-based. It was always one of the first policy considerations that we had. But I would actually turn that to Glenn. Do you know of anywhere in our ordinances where we've done something like that?
Well,
An incentive-based approach?
Can't think of any discounts on building permits, for example you raised. I know we've had a fair amount of discussion about incentive-based zoning laws and we haven't had a lot of opportunities to implement them yet. I know that the current mayor is a fan, she's not here anymore, he is a fan of incentive-based type ordinances. So I think, to the extent that that's something you all want to consider, you probably have some support, at least, from maybe the commission this year and possibly the
I'd like
mayor's
incentive. We have a long way, a lot of discussions to have
Sure,
on this, but I think
it's
an
so
option.
broad,
It's an
and it
option.
could handle so many of the environmental issues that we think about, as far as how we are building codes and using solar, using blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay,
In a
thanks.
small community like this, where, you walk down, every business owner by name and, and really you have a culture of wanting to do things, for the environment. I mean, it just seems like that might be something at least to consider. It doesn't always work. It doesn't, I admit that.
Nettie, you have another question?
I think it can be paired, and
This is really
I
fair.
I think it can be paired with, maybe having a fee, but I think around here particularly, public opinion incentive is probably greater, much, much greater than any type of discount on, building or, permits or anything. Public opinion is big.
Meaning, if I'm walking down the street with a paper bag that has Lord and Taylor or some very nice store, people will be impressed how cool I look. Is that the idea?
I think more walking into a place, and if you have a certain, like a sticker from the town council that you are environmentally green, and that, this can be, and stuff that's written in the Cape Gazette, and it's just very important. I know that from experience, that people do care.
So that's another incentive, to give a green sticker to supplying stores.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
Yeah.
That's like Energy Store, I believe.
Yeah,
That's
it
how
is.
that started,
That's how it
that might be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
It started as an incentive base, and that darn little logo sticker
That's right.
really goes a long way.
It really does, and particularly in a small community like this. I think it really
I have
does.
another question for you,
I have
Dee.
on the, like if you were to attempt to do a law that requires stores to offer a quote unquote incentive, I just think you might want to talk to the chamber about that and get their input. I mean, I'm sure you guys would, but yeah,
Yes.
I just make sure it fits into whatever cost they would have or savings they would have. And just, I don't know. I would love to find an example out there if we can before you head in that direction.
I think that's valid. Actually, I was thinking about it. Maybe you're saying this. I was thinking about it a little differently. I was actually thinking about the city giving the businesses an incentive as opposed to the businesses giving consumers an incentive. You know what I'm saying? Like, so maybe the city gives, I really like the idea of like we in the city have something called, the Main Street, Historical Awards. And so, basically home property owners who do a renovation that keeps with the historic preservation culture of the town gets a real nice plaque and award that they can put on the front of their business or their home that says, you know, from the city through Main Street, that says, hey, you know, we're historically, and people really apply to that and they like it. And so I was thinking something more like that as opposed to requiring the businesses to put in place separate processes.
So it's an attaboy without any financial
Yeah,
benefit to them.
That's more what I was saying, is the city gives an incentive.
Yeah, I guess my concern about an approach like that would be that it just isn't going to move the needle far enough, maybe.
Well, certainly, based on the state's opinion, they passed a ban. They didn't mess around with any fees or anything else. They just went whole hog for the ban.
Well, my
Mary.
question is, now we've talked the state laws about plastic bags, but here in Rehoboth, we're also trying to grapple with plastic bottles and straws and food packaging. And I know you've considered all of these, and I wonder if you have any advice of what would be a good start for a small municipality to regulate some of those other waste streams.
Good point, Mary.
Yeah,
Before we leave the topic
think,
of plastic bags, may I say that I believe the SOLA 3 people have made clear their position, which is in favor of a ban, but we'll certainly have all sorts of options to choose from. But let's move on, Mary. Good point. To other topics. Perhaps we could start with plastic straws. That's often seen as a bad thing, especially for turtles and other sea creatures. Do we have an answer to Mary's question?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, Dee, I'm sorry. Do you have
Okay,
a
sorry.
response to Mary?
Yeah, I think many local governments, as I mentioned, like in New Jersey and even all the way up to big cities, like DC, the low hanging fruit in theory is plastic bags, straws by request, and polystyrene, because they're good alternatives for polystyrene, for instance. Good alternatives exist, and polystyrene cannot readily be recycled, and it's just toxic and horrible for our health. So those three things are probably the easiest things to approach. Whether you want to try to do all three, you know, as your initial go, I'll leave that up to you to figure out. But I would leave bottles for the time being, because that's a lot more controversial, and maybe not controversial, but I think that's higher hanging fruit. And I think we all need to start with the lower hanging fruit first. And, you know, people can readily envision giving up their straws because, frankly, they didn't ask for them to begin with, and they don't use one at home. And most people, there are some people that, you know, prefer them or need them, and that's why we definitely say any laws regarding plastic straws should allow them to be on hand and available by request. We don't want to just ban them 110%. But most people, you know, straws are easy because most people can, you know, get the deal that they can live without them when they go out to dine. And so those are kind of the three easiest things that I would encourage you to start with. And then once we, you know, get those kinds of things underway, I think you will see more and more laws dealing with bottles, and more companies going back to glass or aluminum, and we can encourage them. But I think that movement is a little farther behind the curve.
So the three options for plastic straws are either a ban, or a by request only, or a, what's the third one, Dee?
Compostable.
Well, in my mind, there's only one option. It's the by request option. Right? We do not encourage an outright ban at all.
Okay. Well, I will note that there are a number of stores in Rehoboth Beach that do have plastic straws. Paper straws, like the one I'm holding up here. a number of choices. Some of them are, I went on the web to see how much they cost. They're only pennies, and at least at one of the stores, they don't have them sitting out for anybody just to help themselves.
Yeah,
So you would have to request them, which is okay. People can have a conversation and request it, be nice to each other. They don't have to be angry about it or anything. These hold up very well in water. I'd be glad to have anybody want to do a taste test on these straws to see if they hold up under the fluids, especially for the short time period that you're drinking that. Most people don't ask for a straw when they're getting a glass of wine or a glass of beer or anything. Why should they have to have one when you're getting a soda? One wonders. At least that's my opinion. Also, local Starbucks told me they have the sippy cup lids, which can, if somebody wants to take the beverage out, they sometimes will say, well, I'll need one of the top things with a straw stuck through it, not unlike what you see here in my Chick-fil-A stuff that I picked up on the street, trash. It's got styrofoam, which is doubly bad, but it's got a plastic straw in it through the hole in the top, and Starbucks solves that problem by having the sippy cup idea, which has a little hole in the side edge so that you can drink your beverage without a straw, and the cap still stays on top, so it prevents sloshing out, or same as Nettie has right over here.
And is that recyclable?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Is that plastic recyclable?
Let's see, I'm looking at the number, it's a 6.
No.
Which is
No, it's
not
not.
recyclable.
6 is not a recyclable, nor is this commonly used red Sola cup, which they have gobs of, especially if you're at, somebody's got a keg and everybody just fills them up. And they all end up in the recycling bin, which contaminates our recycling, unfortunately. So,
I
there's that.
know, Seattle just went out with their straws by request, but then if you request, they have to be compostable straws and not plastic. So that's taking it to the next level, which is no plastic, basically a plastic straw ban. Because they say now they're compostable straws, the market is there, and they're not, they're easily available to retailers, where even a few years ago they weren't.
They didn't make very many, so they were very expensive, and a lot of
Yeah.
people would say nothing doing.
Yeah.
But now that the price is getting lower,
Yeah.
it seems much more reasonable to maybe require either a ban on plastic or a by request only. And if it's by request only, that's going to reduce the number of straws they give out for free, which would save the store money.
And restaurants already, there's hundreds of restaurants that already have that policy in Delaware, including Dogfish Head, by request only.
No, it is by request only. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Other topics on straws, I will say that Sola 3 has contacted me saying they are in favor of the by request only when it comes to plastic straws, as opposed to the ban. Anybody else want to share other thoughts on plastic straws? Seems to me someone mentioned that the plastic straw is made of a kind of plastic, which if it gets thrown in with the recycling, it ruins the recycling process. It's a contaminant, and it's something about it's long and skinny. It gets jammed up in the machinery. I note that Kevin Williams is here, our Director of Public Works for the City of Rehoboth. Kevin, any thought on that? Have you heard anything on that topic?
No.
Okay. Try to put you on the spot if ever I can, but didn't work this time.
I have a question about that. Catherine Burgwin again. It seems to me when we did our last Earth Day at church that I remember being told that plastic bottles gum up the recycling. Do you remember that, or did I dream that?
I don't remember that.
That especially as the plastic gets thinner and thinner and thinner, that it ends up being. So has anybody else heard that?
No.
Okay, just
I've
something.
not heard that, only bags.
Only bags. Okay,
The bags are so thin that they gum up the system.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I dreamed it.
As you will. Mary, were there other thoughts on the plastic straws part of stuff?
No.
Okay. You wanna move?
I think this is Janet. I think the reduction simply by request only is huge because it's automatic. You just, like Charlie said, you automatically get a straw if you don't ask soon enough not to get a straw. So, I mean, I've often been in places where we're the only ones that don't have a straw because we've asked. I do have one place in particular that changed their policy because they said customers complained. And I'm still working with that person.
Complained that they had to ask for a straw.
Yes. So they changed it, they reverted. They started out at the beginning of summer, straws only by request, which I said, that's fantastic, good job. And came back a couple months later at the end of the summer, and I was all of a sudden getting a straw. I said, hold on, what? And they said, well, people complained. I said, people will always complain. But, you know, if it's by request only, all they have to do is request it. And that will eliminate.
That's why a law that like makes the playing field level for all restaurants.
Right.
And it instantaneously educates the public, except for maybe those from out of town, but they'll learn quickly. You know, that it makes a level playing field for everyone, and you go from one restaurant to the next, it's going to be the same.
Right.
It will make it easier for them all to comply because they'll all be the same.
I 100% agree with you, Dee.
Also,
Absolutely.
if a store or a waitress or waiter gets asked to, why do I have to ask for a straw, and I'm upset about it, they can always say, hey, not me, it's the state or the city's law, and throw the city under the bus as being the one to blame, I guess. I suspect there'll be very few of those sorts of people if you have an ordinance in place that
But
makes
we're
it
not
mandatory.
denying them a straw. They just ask for it. I mean, we're not saying, no, you cannot have a straw. If you really want a straw, you just requested it, yes, you may have it. So,
And the waiter probably has straws right there in their little bib, pull
Pocket,
one
yeah.
out right there on the spot. They
so
don't have
it's,
to,
I don't see the problem, but anyway.
I don't either. Any further discussions about straws? Hearing none, maybe we could move on to styrofoam, like my styrofoam Chick-fil-A thing here. Again, noting that the Chick-fil-A that's closest to us is out on Route 1, not within our borders, so it illustrates the idea that pollution is a regional, international problem. But we want to be, doing our part, and maybe we'll be an inspiration to others. Maybe the county or the state will pass similar bans on styrofoam, either in styrofoam cups or in styrofoam clamshells, which are the take-home packages. There are readily available alternatives, which are reasonably priced. So I think it's worth discussion as to whether or not we should follow any of these same things, bans or fees or incentives or whatever else. Nettie?
I think we should absolutely ban within the city of Rehoboth all styrofoam. Unless we can come up with a way to recycle it. I mean, there's so many alternatives that I think it's ridiculous.
Well, there is
to be
this
using
kind of an
stuff.
alternative, a number 6 cup, which is
Yeah.
not recyclable, but is probably preferable to styrofoam because styrofoam was so bad, it gets crunched up, little pieces fly all over the place, right out into the ocean.
That's right.
Well, you know what some cities do, instead of just saying styrofoam, and they say, and I saw a model ordinance somewhere, maybe it was Nantucket, that they use the term non-compostable food packaging is banned.
Anything that is not non-compostable. Am I
Right,
saying that
sorry,
right?
I did double
Is
negative. But yeah, they cannot use non-compostable
Yeah.
packaging.
That's definitely the language you want because a lot of containers are advertised as biodegradable, and that is very misleading and often greenwashing, and it's often plastic that just has other chemicals added in to make it break down faster. So I don't know how they get away with that, but part of the reason why they get away with it is because there's no regulation on the word biodegradable and that defines when you can use that word or not and what it means. So they use that word, but it's not really bio-based necessarily.
So you're saying,
What I've learned is that the word compostable is the more trustworthy word of what we're really trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
so it sounds like what you're suggesting is that it's good to ban the styrofoam, but also make it clear what we are allowing by way of alternative cups or clamshells or whatever.
Well, I wasn't familiar with that. If you said Nantucket, I love that idea. I mean, there are other alternatives like the takeout containers that are tin foil, like the heavy aluminum, and that is recyclable. But I think compostable is better. So.
Well,
it depends on how far you want to push that envelope, I guess.
here's a thought. here's a thought, which is that some restaurants here locally in Rehoboth have a hard plastic container, which is a number 5, which is recyclable, even though it's not compostable. And actually, I take home my extra lasagna or whatever from the Lupo restaurant, Italian place, and it's a nice container. I can use it to store other things later on. So I will reuse as well as and if it ever gets to the point where the lid gets cracked, I can put it in the recycling bin because it is a recyclable number 5. So I would think that this is preferable to a styrofoam cup. I don't know that it's preferable to a compostable clamshell take-home package. Any thoughts? Okay, hearing none.
I think you got the hierarchy correct there.
Yeah, the styrofoam is the problem, and I know for the couple businesses that we frequent in Rehoboth that we do get, they attempt to give us in our leftovers a styrofoam clamshell container, which I was refused. I said, "Is there anything else that you have?" They said, "No." So I divvied up what I had amongst the table. I said, "Please just help yourselves. I'm not taking the styrofoam."
You didn't want any of that food to go to waste, by golly.
No,
So
I didn't
we're
really.
just going to stay
We
here
took care of
and
it,
keep
so-
eating until we eat it all.
That's it. That's pretty much true.
I wonder which costs more.
The styrofoam is probably the cheapest.
No,
Exactly.
I meant the
Yeah.
plastic versus the non-compostable.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, but I would guess that this plastic is probably cheaper than the non-compostable alternative, the paper, if you will. Just a
Then that's
guess.
cheaper than the paper,
We don't know.
cardboard,
He's
than the
guessing.
Cardboard.
I'm guessing. I suspect that because the same is true of straws. The paper straws, like this one, cost more. It's only a couple of pennies. I mean, this is like 3 cents or 2 cents, and this one's a penny and a half. If you buy them in large quantities, which every store would do. But the plastic ones are even like 1/3 of a penny. So I'm guessing that this container probably costs less than a paper take-home container.
Do you think it would be worth figuring that out before we make a decision?
I think that would be an excellent area to investigate. I know that, like Nicola
Or
Pizza
make
or Grotto Pizza or any of the pizza places, they put their pizza in a cardboard box. And it's obviously cheaper for them to buy a big plastic thing, I would
Right.
imagine.
Yeah.
Maybe we could ask them if they ever thought about plastic. I don't suppose they ever thought about plastic pizza boxes. That's like that's
Sacrilege.
sacrilege. That's the word I'm looking for.
Dee, I have a question. For compostable, we had investigated as our green team biodegradable versus compostable, and we came out with the feeling that compostable was probably the better option. However, don't you need like a public compost facility for it to actually compost in? Since our usual backyard facilities are not high enough temperature to do that composting. So it's better
So
if you
that's
have a
what
place.
You'll hear certain, like DNREC folks say and whatnot. So because they'll say, well, Delaware doesn't. There's no point in encouraging people to use compostable takeout stuff or at events and whatnot because we don't have an industrial composter anymore. So here's my thought on the subject: is one, we need to develop a market for an industrial composter, and actually Sussex County might be getting one soon. I don't know if it's going to be open to the public, but it is going to be. Apparently they're working on a permit application which would handle a lot of chicken waste. So I don't know whether this sort of thing could also go there. It might not be publicly accessible, but if we don't encourage a trend in this direction, Delaware will never get an industrial composter. And we're also talking about, and this is something Rehoboth could consider, is like getting a mini-sized industrial composter for like the downtown community where people could bring their compostable stuff. But that's another subject for another day, and I'm not an expert in that. But folks at DNREC are. But I also think that if all this stuff, even compostable takeout containers, for instance, go to the landfill, that someday the landfills are going to be mined and or they're going to, wash out in the ocean or whatever. They will not always be landfills. And so I think having compostable stuff there is better than having plastic stuff there. And, you know, I don't know, I think we need to help develop the market so that, you know, we're all trending in that direction, even if we don't have an industrial composter yet.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps I can try to put Kevin Williams back on the spot again. Second try. We do have recycling of unfood contaminated cardboard here in the city of Rehoboth. I try to be, if I ever get a pizza box, I will let my dogs lick all the oils and everything out of the bottom of it, so there's no food contamination. They're very thorough, let me tell you. Do you find, Kevin, that there's any difficulty or problems with putting that in our recycle bins?
So the pizza boxes are a problem because who else besides you is having their dogs lick out the boxes? So you show up at the tipping station with what you call recycles, and they say pizza boxes. It's contaminated. It goes into regular.
That's what I would think. If they see a pizza box,
I'm going to trust your dog to clean out.
if they see a pizza box, they're going to assume that it's contaminated. Do they actually extract and pull out things in the recycling?
No. Once you see something in your truck that's contaminated, the truck goes to the regular.
The whole truck is contaminated because of your one pizza box. Wow. Ouch.
Ooh,
Well,
wow.
I didn't know that.
So let me just make sure I understood what you said. So the whole truck worth of recyclables gets thrown in the landfill if you have one pizza box that's...
Correct. They be contaminated because they're not going to let you throw it out on the ground at the tipping station,
Right.
go through it, segregate it again, and re-go.
Right.
You just drive it around to the other line and you put it in the regular.
Wow, that's a very interesting
So, I mean,
fact.
contamination is a huge issue with,
Yeah.
the recycling.
Well, maybe.
And I just think the reason that I'm shocked is I'm shocked. I wouldn't have known that. So I'm not that I eat pizza, but I'll never put my pizza box into the recycling thing again. And a lot of people do that.
Oh, it's
That would be an
education.
education thing that I think would be worthy of us passing on to people, because that's huge.
Well, I'm going to put my pizza boxes in the trash from now on.
Right.
I'm going to let my dogs lick out all that yummy stuff, but I'm still going to put it in the
Right,
trash.
and all of those pizza
Or if
boxes
you
on the
can rip it,
boardwalk.
Charlie, if the top is clean, you can
Yes.
rip the top off and recycle
That's what I was
that.
just gonna say.
I don't know. I have a feeling that our recycling people will probably say, pizza box, whole truck is contaminated. They won't
do the
bother to
lids.
look to see if it was
Wow.
just the lid or. I
That's a
don't know.
great education opportunity for us.
I
think
take
our-
my lid and put the lid in and take the rest and throw out.
But at
So
least the
that's
pizza
not-
box is
Is better than
compostable and
plastic.
will break down and
Yeah,
That's right, eventually.
right.
So, very
Wow.
good. Interesting
Wow.
discussion. We're sliding over into the issue of recycling and or composting. You wouldn't want us to have us put any of these food contaminated cardboard into the yard waste composting stream. Is that right, Kevin?
Say that again.
I'm thinking about composting. People were talking about composting and how we don't have a composting facility here locally. We do compost our yard waste, leaves and sticks and things like that. Is it a problem for that composting process to have some of these paper take-home things that might have a little contamination of food in it be put in with the leaves and sticks? Is that a problem?
I think so, but I don't know that to be true one way or the other. Just intuitively, to me, it seems like, they're gonna think that's contaminated. Without knowing, well, is that compostable or not compostable, and making that determination in the field. But I don't know that, I'd have to talk to the guys.
Okay, I'm wondering if they have a whole truck full of leaves and sticks and all of a sudden they see Charlie's banana peel has been thrown in there, they might say, the whole thing goes to
That'll be
garbage.
okay, everybody knows that's gonna be great, right?
Everybody like you would think, and coffee grounds and lots of other things that
See that clamshell from wherever, and you go, maybe not.
yeah,
But I don't.
because they don't know whether it's
I'm just
paper
speaking,
or
yeah.
plastic
Yeah.
paper or something or other else. Nettie?
But this would all be solved if we had a huge industrial composter or even small, for the town. Because the heat would be so great that such things as the clamshells or the pizza boxes or chicken wings can actually, with a large compost, and people could purchase compost from that. Okay, that would be solved, that kind of type of thing. would be
Good thinking
solved.
on your part, Nettie. I think I can guarantee you this room would be filled with people who are opposed to having an industrial composter next to their house. That's the way things work around this town, I'm finding out. Just a guess, just a guess. So we've talked about styrofoam and cups and styrofoam take-home things. Are there other styrofoam products we should be thinking about? Any other topics on the styrofoam topic?
I just say one thing about the compostable replacements. One town that I read about, their Chamber of Commerce worked to get centralized purchasing for the businesses to get a lower rate on the packaging that they were replacing the styrofoam with, so that if you work with the Chamber of Commerce, could find the source for the packaging and then the businesses could get it from there. I
Nice.
think that was one city I read that's how they approached it.
Group buying gets you a lower cost.
Yeah.
Excellent plan.
Yeah, and I think that's where the chamber or Main Street or whatever, they might be a point for doing something like that for bags or this, or takeout containers or whatever. And yeah, so I think that's a great idea.
You could do bags, straws, and
Just for the record, I received a communication from SOLA 3 again. As you may know, they've been thinking about these topics for a long time. On the issue of styrofoam, they asked for a ban. So there's their thought on that topic. I believe their positions are echoed by that of the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association. I'm not quite sure about that. I'd have to look at that email that I received again. I believe I sent that email on to,
you did.
yes, it's part of the correspondence received from Sally Foreman for SOLA 3. I think she's coordinating with the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association. But in any event, those are interesting opinions from other sectors of our citizenry. Glad to have their thoughts. Catherine.
Yes, so Solar 3 is recommending banning single-use plastic carry-out bags, plastic straws by request, and banning styrofoam.
That's my understanding of their position.
You were
If I
correct.
misunderstood that, I will try to correct that at our next February meeting. Are there other, let's see, plastic bottles, I think, has been mentioned by Dee as being something that's very tough to go after. I mean, after all, a lot of places want to sell a plastic soda bottle with, Gatorade or whatever in it, and to ban them would mean they'd have to go to aluminum or glass, most likely, which would probably be disruptive to their normal. They make a lot of money on those things. A lot of people come into your store just to get, a soda out of one of those bottles, rip off the top, and then while they're there, they'll buy something else. And, so stores would probably be, the business community would probably be more upset at that, I would guess.
I don't know what Royal Farms would have in their store if the plastic bottles are banned.
Chicken and ice cream.
There might be, and I don't know Rehoboth well enough to know if you might have opportunities to install water refills, reusable water container refill stations, maybe along the boardwalk or in any public parks or even at the convention center or whatever. I know there are, we were doing that in some county parks. We just got one for Glasgow Park that has a water refill station and a fountain and a dog bowl at the bottom.
Nice.
So it's really cool. I could send you a picture of that one if you want.
Please do.
But it's maybe, it's a slightly different subject, but it's one way to encourage people to use their reusable bottles.
Yes, I agree. And several people here today have their reusable bottles with you. Thank you. Going to be in my environmental hero for the day there, Nettie.
Oh, we have some others.
And others.
And we've talked about this.
Yeah, we definitely.
We've definitely talked about this issue as a committee.
I think it's doable in Rehoboth. We already have water on fountains on the boardwalk, so.
Right. Water fountains, I would point out, though, are slightly different from the water refill stations
Yeah.
Right.
in that I know they have them over at the YMCA here in Rehoboth, or just
Church.
outside of Rehoboth. And your church has them.
Yes.
That's Upward United Methodist, great. There may very well be some others, but they're not cheap. They're expensive. How much do they
My
cost?
question, I was wondering if anybody knows what it costs.
I do.
If anybody
I bought it,
specifically,
so.
Kevin or for a city to
Oh.
replace a regular, water fountain with
Well,
a
our
Janet?
green
water
team,
bottle reusable. Do you have any
I think
I
the
do.
one we
Janet,
just
we
got
gotta
for
answer that.
Glasgow Park was maybe about, I can find out, but maybe about $15 $1,500.
No.
But it included a refill station, a fountain, as I said, and a dog bowl at the bottom.
Okay, well,
And it was frost resistant.
It's not bad.
all right, Dee, this is Janet. Our green team just replaced in Epworth a reusable, a regular water fountain with a water bottle filler station, which is a water fountain. And the cost to do the extra plumbing and such, it came to $2,500 for one.
Yeah, I meant to mention the plumbing is
The plumbing is,
additional.
yeah,
So,
you have,
yeah.
the plumbing is additional, so about $2,500 is what we
Yeah.
were quoted. So,
And that one's an internal one, I mean,
yes,
an
it
inside
is,
one,
it's
right?
internal,
Yeah.
it's inside the church.
So it's probably even more
Yeah.
if you go with a frost.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Or a dog, you know.
The point of having the water stations already on the boardwalk is the water source is already there, so you wouldn't have to run water to the different places that Mary was talking about.
Did you have to replumb in order to
A
get the
little
water?
bit, a little bit. It was a little different.
Yeah.
But taking it from the boardwalk, I mean, if you don't have a water source out there, that would be so much more money, but we do. We already have a water source at all these different locations. So that would be in our favor.
Do you know how many water stations or water
did.
fountains we have?
talked about it
What
at one
was it?
point.
Boardwalk?
Steuart would have it right
Yeah,
off the
Steuart
top. I
has it.
thought 24, but maybe I'm
Said
thinking of,
something like that, and I was
Yeah.
surprised it was that many.
I was surprised as well.
yeah. Let me see if I can find it in my notes.
Maybe we could recommend starting with one or two that are sort of closer to Rehoboth Avenue, like in front of a
We could.
lifeguard station or something.
Maybe what we could do is use the brilliant idea of incentives and make it an incentive thing that a school provides one, you know, a project, a Epworth church provides one, and then you have your little
Eagle Boy
tag.
Scout project
Right.
can raise the money to buy one for the
Exactly.
school. Yeah, there are all sorts of
Mhm.
possibilities to find some funding for it.
Or using the money from,
Bags.
plastic bags.
Yes, I can see we're all thinking about raising money now that we know this is not gonna be cheap. Have a bake sale, chocolate chip cookies, I'll buy. Well, that's
The
it.
Delaware Community Foundation does have equipment grants. I wonder if you could classify one of those as equipment.
Get somebody else to pay for it. That's an excellent plan.
There's a lot of grants
I was just
around.
gonna say, I bet there's.
Or, I mean, there's some other foundations you have down that way that might support such a thing.
The Village Improvement Association has money, they might be
In fact,
interested.
Delmarva's got their annual grants now that I understand Rehoboth has applied for one for recycling this year, but maybe next year, they could go in for, I don't know if they can go in again for another grant next year, but.
Well, if you find information on that topic and about grants or about anything along that line, you want to send it to me, I will send it to the entire group. And it's, as I understand from our lawyer, it is not a decisional meeting, it's just a sharing of information, communication. So it'd be perfectly legitimate under the laws that he was concerned about, FOIA and open meetings laws. Nettie, did you have another thought?
This is not clear, but I had a meeting way back with Ernie Lopez, who said, if you're willing to do this locally, I can get you some money. Okay, now I have
Willing to do
no
what?
idea how much.
Willing to do what?
If you're willing to work on any of these, like paper bag or water or whatever, that the state also has grants, that the state actually wants us to do things locally, like California did, and then they can respond. He said the state of Delaware is not gonna respond till localities begin to do stuff. But then they respond because they can't not respond.
Nettie, may I ask that I assign you to be, since you're BFFs with Senator Lopez, that you, excuse my argot of the street there, that you contact him again and see if there might be someone specific that we could ask about a grant or whatever for
Okay,
water
I will.
refilling stations along our boardwalk.
I will do that.
One or more. It's not like
Okay,
you need to have all
okay.
25 of them done right away.
I will do that.
Pilot project at first or something.
Do you know how many there are on the boardwalk?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I might be thinking of the trash cans.
Trash cans, I do 125.
125
There you
trash
go.
cans.
So then it might be the water filling.
Shower towers, 8. Foot showers, probably another 8.
And there's
Water
other-
fountains, I don't know.
Okay.
Do you see, can I ask Kevin a quick question?
I'm sorry, could I interrupt to say you're a fountain of information, Kevin? Thank you.
We just replaced a bunch of
Oh,
them.
Charlie.
Absolutely.
What did you just replace, fountains?
That shower towers and foot showers.
What, do you anticipate any secondary, costs or impacts of, you know, of replacing some water fountains with the refilling stations?
Yep.
The question in my mind would be, are they durable in the saltwater environment?
Right.
We have enough trouble with just the basic drinking fountains that we have now. They corrode very quickly. Something a little more fine, you know, in their operation, like a refilling station, maybe a little tougher in that environment.
Some of the
I'm
reasons.
saying, if you want to put them in here or any other, you know, city owned
Yeah,
properties,
but
great.
going outside.
To walk in the convention doors, fill up, and then on out,
Yeah, that's
or other places. I think it'd be a little more protected from the environment.
Maybe we could talk to local businesses to see if they would like to sponsor one at their business. If so, it gives people, you know, a little foot traffic to come into your store, never hurts.
The cost, if it was a couple $100 or a couple $1,000, doesn't scare us, because, you know, we pay that for the fountains we put out there now because of the corrosion, protection requirements that we do.
I will note that the refill stations, at least at the YMCA that I'm more familiar with, have electricity with them so that they can count the number of refills.
Ours do too.
And there you are. In which case, the electricity would be something that's not out there on the boardwalk right now.
That would be an
That's
issue.
true.
That'd be an
That's true.
extra cost.
Those are the things I was.
Uh-huh.
That's a good point.
And if you had batteries instead of an electric line going out there, you had to change the batteries and,
It's a whole ripple effect.
unless you had a solar panel on the top to recharge the batteries.
Now, that would be really cool.
I would like that. You could be #1 in the state on that, I'll bet. Guinness Book of World Records,
We'll have to
come on.
put it next to the historic water fountain in,
Green star for us, yeah.
the next historic water fountain.
Very good. Well, I hopefully beat the death of this topic of water fountains, but we appreciate your volunteering, Nettie, to pursue that
I will
angle.
see what we could do.
Any other pursuits that, Janet, you want to tell us more about? Are there some that aren't connected with electricity that you know of from your shopping?
For what?
I'm sorry, water refill stations. we're
Oh, water
talking about.
refill. That's the only ones that we've really gotten into, that's the ones that we had in there. And it's become very popular, and what we found is for water bottle filler stations, we also then had to supplement at the end with offering, I guess she just took hers, the reusable mugs that we now sell. Because people didn't have them, and they said, well, what are we supposed to use? They were refilling the plastic bottles, which we knew that's not good because of leaching of chemicals and such. So we then our next step was to have the reusable bottles, which we had talked as a committee here that businesses could do, put their name on it, be a souvenir for people, and they could use them at the water bottle filling stations. So I think it's a win-win all the way around if we could do that in any capacity.
Sure, local restaurants or stores.
I
of any
mean, that's
kind
what
could-
we had. We had our Epworth on it, and people carried them around, and they could have their business names on it. It becomes an income for them and a souvenir for people that are visiting us.
I went to Rehoboth Beach and I came home with this lousy t-shirt and this really cool reusable water bottle.
There you go. So that would be my comment.
Any other comments, ridiculous or otherwise, to add to the knowledge base that we have here for refillables? Hearing any other?
I have one, I've been talking to some of the business owners just to kind of get a feel for their support. And I think everything we talked about, that not the plastic water bottles, that is definitely, there is not support for banning plastic water bottles at this time. But the other things I think we discussed about, at least, you're getting positive. The one kind of interesting thing I never really thought of, but you know, you take your coffee mugs in and get them refilled as opposed to getting a paper. At least one of the businesses brought up an interesting point. They said, we don't really like to do that because there's potential health hazards of putting somebody's cup, or mug underneath a spout, and germs and bacteria potential spreading that way as opposed to us using a paper cup. And I'm just wondering if everybody heard of that, or if there's a solution out there to that. 'Cause I feel like that's a really legitimate concern. And this is where I've heard this. These are businesses that really want to do the right thing for the environment.
Sure.
They're also concerned with the health and spread of
Well, when I take mine everywhere I go for different things, and I never put it right up to the little piece that's, I keep it down, because really, when you're filling up your cup anyway, you don't put it all the way to the top where it would touch anything. It's sitting down here, and then you move it and it stops. The other thing that you could also think of too is the number of people in the paper cups do refill their paper cups too.
Well, that's
So they're
true.
still doing that.
That's true.
So we're just doing it in the refillable. So yeah, many people do that.
I will respond, Lisa, to say that at Starbucks, I have a ceramic tall mug,
Yeah.
and when I bring it in to get, they give me a nickel off of the price too. Thank you, Starbucks. And they say, "Would you like me to rinse that out for you, Charlie?" And I'll say, "Sure, that's great." So that helps with the
Was just gonna
concern
write
of
it in the
sanitation,
back.
I guess.
Germs.
Rouseabout has a bunch of coffee, servers, and they do, the women that are the baristas, they always take it, if you bring in your own, they take it out of their little casing and put it so you can put your mug under, because you can't put your mug under with the way they're built, because you're having to do it sideways, and so they personally take it up. It's hard for them, but they put it down, but again, we need to make things, so
Yeah, I was
it's.
just curious, I heard that, I'm like, I never thought about that, but it's valid, it's a good
That
point.
is a valid
Yeah,
point.
it's very good.
I know when you go to like
Yeah.
a buffet in a restaurant, I've been told there's a State Department of Health rule that you can't reuse the same plate. When you have to have a clean plate every time you go to a buffet, and for that reason, they don't even want your used plate anywhere near the, where the food is. And so I think it is an interesting point, and we'll see how it goes, but I haven't heard anything about, it's kind of new, this people refilling their coffee mugs.
Well, at the Rise Up Coffee place where I went just this morning, they not only have these paper straws, but they also have silverware. So that if you're eating your croissant or something with a knife or a fork, and you put all that back along with your ceramic cup that they lent to you, gave to you, all that can get rewashed and reused, which is a nice thing to encourage as well. I will say that I'm from West Virginia, and I only owned one fork. So I just lick it off like that and clean it. That was as clean as it needed to be, because I was the one who was gonna use it next time.
You and your dogs.
Well,
It's
the other
all-
thing is like.
My
with
dogs could
coffee,
lick it off too.
I think coffee is sort of, because it's boiling water and it's coffee, I don't know that you need to worry about bacteria as much with coffee, but
Boiling hot coffee.
but food maybe.
Great. Well, we've been having a lot of fun and education here about topics regarding recyclable or non-recyclable, reusable, and other sorts of topics when it comes to plastics. Let me say that I have put together a draft recommendation. Would you take one, Kevin, and pass those around? Letter, two-sider, talking about potential proposal to the commissioners, in which it would list some options, would list a rationale, would list some websites for further information. I did this principally for the format rather than for the content all that much. So I seek your input on the content or the format or the anything. Lisa, would you like one of these? Because I want us to, at some point, get down to making
Forgot about you.
a presentation to our commissioners to see what it is that we're recommending. And I don't know that we finally decided on anything amongst all these options, but we can certainly, as I did at the top of this, to make options available to the commissioners. So they have options, but then we could also, in addition to that, say that amongst those options, here are the ones that we prefer, and what's our rationale for preferring one over the other of the options. So I'm pushing us, if you will, a little bit to get moving on this. I know that other citizens in the city of Rehoboth, like Sola 3 and the Rehoboth and Beach Homeowners Association, are eager to move ahead. They don't want to be bogged down in too much bureaucracy of this committee. So I would like to respond to those in our city who are eager to see us move ahead. Not to say that we should not go ahead and take enough time to make a reasoned decision. We can talk about this again at our February 7 meeting, which will again be at 1 o'clock, not at 11 o'clock. Make sure you remember that. There was a conflict with the 11 o'clock hour, so we agreed to have it at 1 o'clock. But for today, are there other discussions on plastics? Yes, Commissioner Schlosser.
So I just might wait, just from going through several ordinances over 2.5 years now, the commissioners, just a couple of suggestions for the group to consider. One, you might want to consider inviting the Chamber of Commerce and Rehoboth Beach Main Street to your next meeting. Run this by them, get get their feedback from the business, ask them or if they want to bring other business members. But I would definitely, before you come to the commissioners, I would have that group get together, or just invite Carol and, the president of the chamber and the president of Main Street to come in and, just talk to you a little bit and get their initial reaction. So that's one thing. And maybe even, I think Mark Sanders is the new president of the,
Main Street.
maybe him as well. So you get kind of that
Yeah.
resident as well as the business representation, some initial feedback before you go to the commissioners.
Let me respond by saying that Steuart Martens, who's not here today, but has been and I think still is a small business person, has a natural affinity and relationship to the business community. I myself am a small business owner too, so I'm sympathetic to that perspective as well. But Steuart has already had a meeting with Carol Everhart on this topic, and she has said that they're going to have a board meeting of some sort or other coming up pretty soon, and that she would be glad to give Steuart 5 minutes or something like that on their agenda. So we are reaching out to the business community. Thank you for that suggestion to remind us, though. I didn't know that we wanted to have a lot of us show up to talk to them. After all, they've got, a lot of other people in the room. But if anybody would like to join Steuart Martens in reaching out to the business community that way, both Main Street and the chamber, let us know, and Steuart will probably be amenable to having you come along.
So that meeting is in February, I think, right? It's been settled for February 3rd or something, does any? 7th?
Well, our meeting is
No, our
February 7th.
meeting's
The
the
Yeah,
chambers
no, the
meeting
chambers meeting,
is the 4th or the 3rd or something?
something like that.
Something
Does
like that,
anybody
yeah.
remember?
No, because at
No.
the time, they weren't sure when they
Okay.
talked to
They
us.
may be moving. Then we'll
Well,
have to-
Dee, I think you were gonna present something
good.
to our chamber, weren't you?
Or to our commissioners?
Honestly, I forget what the meeting, who's hosting the meeting and who's going to be there, but I was invited to come to a meeting in February. I think it's the 4th.
We'll have to double check on that, because we're all getting some shaking no-nos. I don't think so, or
I have 4
Speaking
or
for the commissioners, the next step for the commissioners meeting is for Charlie representing, and of course, all of you are welcome, to come when you're ready, to come with your recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. That's the next step, whenever that is. If it's February, if it's March, whatever you guys want to do. When you're ready, that's the next step, is for you to get all this input from business, from Dee, whoever, and just come give us a recommendation. And one of those recommendations might be to have a more in-depth conversation with Dee, or to whatever your recommendations are. That's what we're looking for next.
great, thank you, Lisa. Can I ask if do you get a sense that the commissioners are chomping at the bit to see something from us on this topic? Or are they willing to say, look, whenever you're ready, take your time?
I think the commission, you have a set of commissioners that voted, I think unanimously to start this committee, because we
Thank
really
you.
like to see some proposals come forward. And particularly, we're in the process of budget discussions, so if there is anything at all that you want us to consider, it's definitely sooner rather than later that you want to come in front of us.
Good point.
Gotcha. Did you give us the date of that next meeting, or you said we could decide? Those meetings occurred, the commissioners' meetings
Yeah,
occurred.
probably a workshop meeting, if I probably, and again, we'll have to run this by Mary and the other commissioners, but I would suggest maybe the March, whatever the commissioners, I don't have a calendar in front of me, the March workshop meeting. Ian, do you know it off the top of your head?
No.
Okay, it's whatever the March
Does it
workshop.
happen on a regular basis?
They
'Cause I
have one
it
every
does.
month.
It's
We have
the-
a workshop meeting that's typically, I think it's the first Monday of the month, or the second Monday of the month, and then we have a voting meeting typically towards the end of the month.
So it
But
would be-
this would be a good topic for our workshop meeting.
If it's the second Monday of the month, we're meeting before that, and perhaps we could, if it's like the 10th.
Right, and
could
then the
come.
big meeting with Carol Everhart is occurring before we meet as well. Okay, so the first Monday is the 2nd, and the second Monday is the 9th.
I want to say it's
It's on the website.
The regular meeting is held on the 3rd Friday. If
Okay,
you want to figure out the workshop, back it up 11 days.
okay.
Because it's not necessarily may be held
It's
on
probably the
the
9th then.
first Monday.
Okay, I'll look it up on the website.
Any other thoughts or comments on single-use plastic products generally that we need to discuss today?
Sorry, one last thing.
Yes,
When you
Lisa.
come in front of the commissioners, a couple things that really resounds well is for us to hear that you have communicated, coordinated with Carol, with RBM, with Main Street, with the business community, with the residential community through maybe the homeowners, and then also anything you can bring forward that shows that you benchmarked what we're trying to do with other similar municipalities is really helpful as we're considering some of the recommendations that we will bring forward. So I just might suggest you compile something that shows what other municipalities are doing in this area.
So by benchmarking, you mean you're saying before we had this law, we had 60,000 bags being used and now only 10 are being used?
Well, that's helpful. That's actually really good too, but also just
What other-
simply, this is what New
other
Jersey's
places
doing.
Right.
Dee mentioned a couple of municipalities that are moving forward, outside of Delaware. So,
Mhm.
so just like, the city of, I don't know, what's a city in New Jersey on the shore, whatever. This city has put in
Cape
place
May,
this
yeah.
type of ordinance. It has these provisions. So.
Right, we got some correspondence on that from people who had done that sort of research and sent it to us about, what New Jersey's doing, what Massachusetts is doing.
That's, if you could have that. in your-
We'll include that all in our proposals, so they know that we've done our homework. Hearing no further thoughts or comments on all these things plastic, I thank you, Dee Durham, for taking time out of your life and away from your family. I know your husband has been ailing. I hope he's better. We'll say a little prayer for him. But if you choose to hang up, you are certainly welcome to do so. I don't think we have very much else to discuss this morning, though. Do note that our agenda had something on there about Newark, Delaware, has a city plan and a grant that they got regarding the development of a green plan for Newark. I myself, you may know, am very interested in the idea of a climate action plan for our city that would endeavor to reduce our carbon footprint or our pollution of carbon dioxide. I think, Kevin, you have an interest and a history in solar energy. And I suspect you may share that sentiment as well. If you do look at that Newark, Delaware plan or have other suggestions, I know the city of Aspen, Colorado has a great climate action plan. We could maybe take that and just change the name from Aspen to Rehoboth Beach and we'd be all done. But we perhaps should have some discussion. I'd like to have that on our next meeting agenda. Are there other topics that other people would like to see on the next meeting agenda?
We're going to have Heather with her pesticide thing.
That's
too.
right, Heather with pesticides and/or 5G.
Yeah.
If she's ready to go on talking about those things. Any other topics? Plastic balloons. I know that there's some people. We can put that off to another time.
Low-lying fruit.
Lots of things for us to discuss.
We actually, just that you brought it up, I'll mention, we actually have been working with Senator Stephanie Hansen on state legislation to ban the practice of releasing balloons. And we expect the legislation to be introduced any day now. It's being circulated now for co-sponsors. And so if you talk about it at some point and you can endorse support for it and express that to your local state legislators, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Dee. I see on our agenda, we've got a topic for committee member comments and citizen comment. Any further comments from our committee members? Any comments from the citizenry who is here today? Would like to share any thoughts that you have? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
And I do have a
Oops,
comment.
sorry.
Do we need to nominate somebody to be your vice chair?
Yes, I would like to see that happen. Let me reiterate, I think I mentioned it before. Love to have someone step forward and be the vice chair, which doesn't mean you have any special duties. It's just that if my throat is so sore from talking too much or anybody else wants to lead the discussion, it's nice to have a vice chair. Any volunteers?
Are you gonna do that at your next meeting?
We'll talk about that more at our next meeting coming up, so that'll be an agenda item. Thank you,
Okay.
Catherine.
You're welcome.
Did I hear a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And it's been moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. This meeting is adjourned.